The race for the US presidential election 2020 has now entered its last leg, with just about 7 days left for the presidential election of this year itself. At this point in time, we thought it would be appropriate to look at how the market reacts 1 week before the elections and 1 week post the election. So what we did was compile a list of the election dates over the last 40 years and see how the S&P 500 has reacted 7 days prior and 7 days after. And there is a common theme that really stands out. The market traditionally goes long into such political events, and once the event is out of the way, we see some bit of selling pressure. To simplify, or to say it in other words, there is a rally that we see 7 days before the US presidential election, and there is a market fall that we see after the 7 days once the US election has been concluded. But just to give you a sense of what the numbers look like, the S&P 500 has gained 7 days before the election during 8 out of the last 9 times. The S&P 500 has also declined 7 days after the election during 6 out of the last 9 elections that we've had. So prior to the elections, which is 7 days that we are referring to, since 1992 we have always had a rally, and the largest one being 6.9% that we got in 2008, I beg your pardon, and then we had 1998 where the S&P 500 was negative to the tune of about 1.4%. But other than that, there have been a couple of rallies of about 2 percentage points each, and the last 2 times, which is 2012 and 2016, we've had rallies which have been more than 1% each, that is 7 days prior to the US election. Shifting focus to the after election result that we've had 7 days post the election, we've had a decline in the S&P 500, like I was telling you, 6 times out of the last 9 that we've had. The last one in 2016, however, was a rally of about 2% odd, but before that we'd seen in 2012 minus 4% for the S&P 500. The largest fall that we saw was in 2008 when the S&P 500 fell more than 10%, and then you have a few instances where the market declined about 2.5 to 3.5% right from 1984 to 2004, and you have a couple of instances in 1996 and 2004 where the S&P 500 managed to advance about 2 odd percent during each of the times. What is also interesting is to note how the market has performed during various US presidents. Let me have a look at that as well, starting off with ever since Bill Clinton was in office in 1992, the S&P 500 on an absolute basis surged about 70%, which translates into just about 14% CAGR return. But the next term that he served from 96 to 2000, that time the S&P 500 more than doubled for itself, which also means that the CAGR return was closer to 20% during that term. George Bush, the 2 terms that he served from 2000 to 2004 and from 2004 to 2008, both of those instances resulted in an S&P decline of about 20% and 10% respectively, which also equates to about minus 5.5% and 3% on a CAGR basis. But the last 3 presidents that we've had, Barack Obama, twice that he was in office, the S&P rose more than 40% during each of his tenures. That is about a double-digit CAGR return as well. But the interesting one, Donald Trump in 2016 till now, the S&P 500, despite the ups and downs of 2020, has surged about 60%, which also translates into a 12.5% rally that we have seen on a CAGR basis. But to sum up, what the market has actually done is went long into the US elections, and once the election is out of the way, we have seen some bit of profit booking that has happened for the S&P 500.